That's my encouragement is B minus work saves the world. Don't wait for perfection because that is a false lie that does not exist, and just get started.
You're listening to the Transcendent Farmer podcast with your host, Emily Reno, a place where we dive deep into the question of accessing land and capital to start a farm. You see, I'm right alongside my listeners, working to start a farm of my own within the next 5 years. And at the same time, I've had a huge travel bug since I was in community college. Back in November of 2023, I sold all of my belongings and became a digital nomad, working as a remote consultant in food systems planning with clients mostly in the upper Midwest and the United States. And I took my mic with me as I traveled everywhere from India to Australia to Costa Rica, digging into stories around mental health and well-being, personal growth, holistic business development, and more. You see, my hunch is that while folks are looking at technical solutions to help the next generation access land and capital to start their farm, such as tax incentives and land access databases, the change that we're seeking has a lot more to do with the non-material. And in my own experiences, my life changed when I started doing the inner work to shift my thoughts, and therefore, my reality. That's why in this podcast, we dive deep into topics like manifestation, energy, and spirit. There's no topic that's off the table, and I'm so excited for you to join me in this journey as I continue to travel, follow my curiosity, and explore the parts of farming that are a bit more taboo and tender. Welcome back, Transcendent Farmers, to episode number 30. It's pretty incredible that we've made it this far together, so wherever you find yourself, please give yourself a pat on the back. You've made it. It's been a marathon. And I'm really excited to be introducing today's episode, provide a bit of an update about what I have been up to. So a lot of folks have this question, what do I do? I feel like the biggest value that I have to offer is helping folks save time in accessing land, capital, or land and capital for their first farm business. So how do I do this? By leveraging AI to reduce the time that it would normally take to find funds that you're eligible for, vet them to ensure that they're a good fit, and complete applications in a fraction of a time that they would normally take. So why do I know that this works? Because I've been doing it through my consulting work for about 2 years now, and it's working. I'm seeing crazy results, like bringing in over $500,000 for one of my clients in just 3 months of working together. Some of these were shorter term funding sources, others were 3-year projects, and one ended up getting extended after the organization showed that they were having a positive impact with the farmers that they sought to serve. So this was a nonprofit organization, right? And if this sounds like something that you'd like to learn more about and your eyes start to glaze over when you're looking through grant databases, set up a time to chat with me. In just 15 minutes, we can figure out, is this a good fit for you and your budget at this time? You can find a link to book a time with me in the show notes for this episode. Some quick updates on the business and travel front before we dive into this week's episode. You'll hear a little bit later in the episode, but I find myself in a season of deeply investing in my growth as a podcaster, as a businesswoman, and as an expert in language. This has resulted in hiring 2 different business coaches, applying and getting accepted into the Podcast Academy's mentorship program and Middlebury Institute's Spanish Community Interpreting Program, hiring a video editor and a marketing guru. So shout out to my new team members, Mauro in Argentina and Amir in Germany. Mezclada is now operating with a team in 4 countries. So basically what happened is that I started putting the energy that I had been investing in writing grants for my clients into writing applications for my own work. And so far, I'm seeing some really great results. And that is not to say that there hasn't been a fair amount of tears along the way, a lot of discomfort, right? There's a saying that in order to be above average, you need to be willing to do what average people aren't. I completely agree. And if that sounds like you, you are in good company. So keep listening because that is what Mezclada is all about. We're building a movement of radical thinkers, of action takers, of people who aren't willing to settle and instead are the first people to raise their hand, their voice, and call themselves out and other people basically on their bullshit. I think that the world needs more of these folks. We don't need more play it safers. And that brings me to this episode, which somehow got lost in the digital coffers and then was suddenly rediscovered about a month ago, literally 2 years after this interview was recorded. So if you're ever looking for an example of someone who is living outside of the box, Liz is it. This is one of my favorite interviews to date, and that's why I'm so glad that I found it. This conversation is actually the reason why I started to build out beta courses, because I'm so inspired by the lifestyle and model of income that Liz has built for herself, leveraging her artistic talents on Skillshare. I think you will similarly love the juicy nuggets that she shares about her own journey, what farmers have to gain from building streams of passive income for themselves, and how easy it can be. She also name drops some business coaches herself, so be sure to check out the show notes for details and let us know what was your favorite thing that you learned from this episode in the comments, and I will give you a shout out in a future episode. Speaking of which, thanks so much to Patty for sharing the following on a recent Transcendent Farmer episode titled Empowered Choices: How to Find Clarity in Uncertain Times. Patty writes, I was literally riding my bike to yoga as you were reminding me about embodying feelings, changing locations to change thought patterns, and more. Your podcasts are peaceful, informative, and inspiring. Thank you. Thank you, Patty. We so appreciate your feedback. And Eric, commenting on the universal sound connecting to your heart space and waking dreams with Terry Morris, wrote, this is one of my favorite episodes. I've listened to it so many times. Terry is so inspiring. I couldn't agree more with you, Eric. And after sharing this feedback with Terry herself, she's agreed to come back on the podcast to share more of her brilliant wisdom with us all. So stay tuned, folks, and keep leaving your feedback because it truly makes a difference. And I do read all of it myself. So with that, let's dive into today's chat with Liz Brindley. I'm super excited to have Liz Brindley with me today. This is actually the first time that we are connecting. We were introduced through a mutual friend, Katie, and I was super stoked to get to learn a little bit more about your work. And I'm just really glad to be able to introduce others to you. So, Liz is an illustrator and a business coach for women who are starting their own creative businesses. Her unique approach to creative business coaching isn't from sort of this old rigid method of doing business. And instead, she's really taking an approach that's inspired by nature that helps you see your creative business as a thriving ecosystem that nourishes the lifestyle that you desire while also creating positive impact in the lives of your community and customers. Liz describes her illustration work as abstract, minimal, playful, and inspired by the natural world. Much of her inspiration comes from time working in the local farm and food industry in New Mexico. And she creates artwork to spread the joy and beauty of nature and believes that the more that we can fall in love with the earth, the more we will protect and preserve our precious natural spaces. So Liz received her bachelor's with a double major in studio art and art history from St. Olaf College with distinction. She is the recipient of a National Scholastic Art and Writing Gold Key Award, and her selected artwork was displayed in the President's Committee on the Arts and Humanities exhibition in Washington, D.C. Her artwork has been exhibited in galleries across the United States, and she has created illustrations for clients, including an international social media company and the Georgia O'Keeffe Museum. So if that wasn't enough, Liz is a top teacher on Skillshare, and she works with coaching clients who are building creative businesses around the world. Thank you so much for joining me, Liz.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here and chat.
Yes. So one of the things that I think is really good to start off for folks is just if you could describe a little bit about your cultural background and your trajectory into business coaching.
Yeah, absolutely. So, sharing a bit just about my family background and like the structures of how I grew up, I think is really fascinating to look at like why I'm doing what I'm doing now. So, just in terms of like cultural background, I know a lot more about my mom's side. So, I have a lot of Norwegian heritage, Scottish, and English heritage. My grandmother on my mom's side was full Norwegian. So, I'm like a quarter Norwegian. And so, I have all of that knowledge, but my dad's side is pretty lost and foggy. So we're not totally sure on all of the heritage there. But I think what's also really fascinating is that it wasn't something that I thought about until I was much older because I didn't think about it as a kid. But both of my parents were essentially entrepreneurs in different ways. My mom really carved out a teaching job for herself. She taught creative problem solving and creativity. She's one of the most creative people I know. So I just grew up in a home that really cultivated and honored creativity. And I feel so lucky for that. And then my dad was actually the head of an emergency room at a local hospital in Oklahoma City, but he oversaw all of the physicians and doctors. And so he was setting schedules and really kind of like his own boss in that way. So it was not that they like ran their own unique businesses, but they did have like full entrepreneurship in those areas. So I think just seeing that modeled growing up subconsciously like led me to think broader of what's possible for like work on a daily basis. So yeah, that's a bit about my background with them.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I think that is super unique, right? To be surrounded by people growing up that value creativity. I think that's one of the things I hear a lot from people is that it is often a thing that sort of just gets stifled, or yeah, there isn't value placed on that. So that's really, really exciting. And it is also funny too. I've heard a lot about this idea of like when you think about your parents' professions or certain characteristics, personality characteristics that make them successful or things that they do naturally, and then sort of thinking about your own personality and stuff that you absorb from them. I mean, this is fascinating. When I was thinking about my mom, for example, she works as an administrative assistant. So she's kind of like the frontline person for this big office space. And she's always greeting people, very social. She's like people's first point of contact. And I can definitely see how like she creates this space for people that's very nourishing and oftentimes plays like the mom figure for them. And I have so many people who say similar stuff about me, like, oh, you just have such a caring spirit, right? And then like on my dad's side, he's worked as an outside salesman for an electrical company for pretty much my entire life. And I think that so much of what requires people to be good as salespeople is connecting somewhat of like a charismatic personality. Like you have to be willing to put yourself out there and connect with strangers and ask questions, like be curious. And I see so much of what is required in order for my work to go well to have a lot of those similar characteristics. So it's really cool to see how you're in this creative space and then that sort of presented itself for you today. And now, a special message from your host of The Transcendent Farmer. Hey guys, so I have some really exciting news. I have been accepted into the Spanish Community Interpreting Program at Middlebury, one of the most respected interpreter training programs in the United States. This credential will allow me to provide professional simultaneous interpretation at agricultural conferences, farmer trainings, and community events, making sure that Spanish-speaking farmers have the same access to resources, funding, and opportunities as everyone else. I have just 20 days to raise $6,515 to cover tuition, travel, and workshop costs, and I would love your support. I'm increasing this to $7,000 as my goal because of the transaction costs associated with hosting this on a crowdfunding campaign platform. So here's how you can help. You can donate any amount. The link is going to be included in the show notes for that particular funding page. You can sponsor as a brand or business with perks like podcast shoutouts, newsletter features, or social media visibility, or you can simply share this campaign with your network. Every dollar will be reinvested into the farming community, from bilingual farmer training to Spanish language podcast episodes. So you can learn more and donate using the link in the description for this particular episode. And I just want to say thank you for helping me bridge languages and build farms. With that, let's get back to today's episode.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's so fascinating to see that, how that trickles down and how we embody it in our own lives.
One of the things that I'm really curious to learn more about, and the reason is because I don't think enough people are talking about it in the farming space, is the role that passive income plays in your business and where you first got the idea that that was even something that you could create for yourself.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I love this topic so much. I'm such a nerd when it comes to passive income, so I could talk about it all day. So just to give some context around that, so I started my business in 2017, so about 5 years ago at the time of this recording. And when I started, I was doing a lot of direct trade. So I was like teaching directly in person. I was selling my work on hand printed products, and all of that was really beautiful. But I was like working 3 other part-time jobs essentially while I was building my business. So I was exhausted. And so I started to be curious about if there was a better way, if there was a better way to bring in income, if there was a more balanced way to bring in income in my business. And I was learning from a really fabulous surface pattern designer, which is essentially when you create illustrations that get on products in the world. And her name is Bonnie Christine. She's really big in the industry. And I was listening to one of her lessons or courses on Skillshare, I think, and she was talking about income that doesn't have a cap and work that you do once that then pays you for years to come. And I was like, let's do more of that. Like as soon as I heard that, I was like, okay, let's go. This is the path for me. And so I just started to get really curious about what those options looked like. And it came to the point now where like my big dream is that like 95% of my current business in the future will be passive income. I do want to say that like there's kind of some myths around passive income. Like the word sounds like you don't do anything. It's a lot of upfront work for later reward, but I think it's really beautiful in the sense that that upfront energy can continue to support you and your business as you progress and as you grow. So currently in my business, I have a few different passive income streams. One of my main ones is teaching on Skillshare. So as you mentioned, I'm a top teacher on that platform. I love that platform, teaching students all around the world. So once I make a course, it lives on that platform forever. I'm still making income off of the very first course I made in 2019, I think was my first course. And then I also have passive income from illustrated products that I create and sell through print on demand partners. So essentially it's magic where I create illustrations, I upload them to a product, and then the company, anytime an order comes in, will print and ship it for me, and I take the cut. So that means that once I've created the product, they take care of everything else. And what's great about that is that I don't have to house inventory. And so that just reduces expenses as well. So, yeah, that's the brief overview of what I could continue talking about forever. But yeah, that's how it all kind of started.
That's incredible. And I think for those who are less familiar, I hope that from what Liz has just said, like the idea of passive income in general is just that you are creating something first time investment, right? And then it lives out there in the world. People have the opportunity to access it any time of the day, any time zone, right? As long as you have internet access. And then they can pay for whatever it is that you're selling, and then as the entrepreneur, you get to reap the rewards of that sale, basically indefinitely, as long as you've got your stuff out there. And I think you've provided some really good examples of how that happens using other people's platforms. But there's also ways that if you want to create your own product or whatever it is through your own platform as well, like if you have a website and maybe somebody pays for a download of brochure or a digital booklet or whatever that thing is,
Mhm.
that's also a method of doing that. I've been fascinated by this idea of like digital assets and licensing of art and thinking about how people, especially in the farming space, I mean, you're like farmers are surrounded by botanical beauty
Yes.
every single day. What would it look like to be able to snap a few photos that end up becoming stock imagery that they're selling on Adobe,
Mhm.
right? Like these aren't conversations that I think I normally have with
Mm.
other farmers about generating income. But this is the kind of stuff that I want to share with people and be like, yeah, actually, you can do this.
Absolutely. And just on that note, like with passive income, right? Income is in the title. So we're often thinking about like, oh, money is the main resource coming in. I honestly think, yes, but that's giving you more time. And time is our most precious resource. And so what's beautiful about passive income is that upfront work allows you more time later and more spaciousness later. And when I was in the farming industry, I was just working on farms. I never had my own farm, but it was a great time to kind of observe and hear what farmers go through. And farmers are so busy. They are strapped. It's some of the most challenging work. I have so much respect for what farmers do. And in harvest season, they don't have time to do much else besides grow food and harvest food and take care of the farm. And so it was just something I really observed, that like that strapped for time and how passive income can actually give us more time while still bringing in income. So that's some of the beauty as well around that.
I mean, my mind just spins with the ideas, even like thinking about that context of the height of summer season, the chaos, like what would it look like to recognize the value of paying a videographer, maybe a summer intern or something, is capturing the stories of what's happening on the farm or whatever that looks like with certain plants, how you're doing the production of this thing. And then, come winter season or whatever, you've got content that's already ready to go.
Yes.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And so I'm curious to know, because it sounds like you've worked with a lot of people one-on-one, you have your own courses. In that process, what have you found that, when it comes to online sales, coaching, offering courses online, what do you think holds people back the most from putting themselves out there? Or in your terms, which we'll get into later, pressing publish?
Mm. Yeah, I think it's twofold. It's waiting for everything to be perfect, which is matched by the fear of quote unquote failing. So I think that's like two sides to the same coin. And that's what I see time and time again with anyone that I talk to, any creative who's really embarking on something new, whether that's publishing a course or starting their creative business. It's something I call like the creative wilderness. Like it can feel like there's a lot of unknown territory ahead, and you're like standing on the edge of that, and you're like, "Ooh, it's so inviting." But I don't quite know the full path. And I need to know every single detail of the journey. I need to have everything dialed in. I need to have all the right gear. I need to be totally perfect before I step into that. And that keeps us stuck. I mean, I've been in that before as well. And I think that's the most common thing is that we're waiting to feel like we have everything perfect. There's this quote that a dear friend of mine, who's a fellow illustrator and top teacher on Skillshare, Dylan Mierzwinski, she once shared this quote that she heard that says, B minus work saves the world. And I absolutely love that as like a mantra to be like, yeah, don't go for A plus plus, don't go for A, like B minus, and as creatives, and I think as farmers too, like farming is a creative act. I see farming as art, and farmers are artists of the land. And so I think as creatives, however that takes shape, we want our work to be beautiful. So it's really hard to put something out that feels like B minus. But when we remember that when we launch something that's B minus, we're still helping people. And most people don't see what we see in terms of quote unquote mistakes. And when you launch something that's B minus, great, then you can get feedback and improve it and refine it and improve it. But until you get it into the world breathing and living, like it's just stagnant energy. So that's my encouragement is B minus work saves the world. Don't wait for perfection because that is a false lie that does not exist, and just get started.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that you mentioned that. I have a good colleague too that he has been a farmer for the last 20 years. And I think his mantra is basically just like the Nike thing, right? Just do it. Just
Mm-hmm.
get started
Mm-hmm.
and get out of the analysis paralysis mode. And I think that the more that farmers lean into that, the more success that they're going to have in this as well. But yeah, I think even when I'm thinking about a lot of the people who might be listening to this, many of them aren't even necessarily in the place of having their own property. A lot of them are still thinking about the types of business models that they can create, how to make farming in general more financially sustainable. And I know that there's this book out there, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I think, and I've read
Yeah.
it, but I've
I've
heard
started
it
that
enough.
actually. I started it like 3 weeks ago. That's funny. Yeah.
So there's something about like the percentage of income that they recommend getting to in terms of what's covering your fixed expenses. And
Mm.
this is an idea that I'm just fascinated by, and I'm still trying to figure out what's my own metric or point that I want to reach of how much of my fixed expenses do I want covered by my passive income. And I'm just thinking like strategy wise, right? For people that are trying to get into farming and they know that there are going to be things that are, $500,000 for a piece of property and another 20, 30, $40,000 for a piece of equipment. What are the ways that they can provide this level of financial sustainability for their fixed expenses, no matter what kinds of debt that they might have to take on, other kind of financial arrangements that they might have to make in order to, have access to this property. I can't help but think that potentially investing this upfront time in building out passive income for themselves first, and then getting to the point of getting on the land might be the most strategic thing that they can do to provide like a buffer, right, against whatever happens on the
Yeah.
farm.
Yeah. I love this. I feel like this is another myth around passive income that I hear a lot that I don't agree with personally, which is like, oh, passive income takes longer to start generating, so don't start it yet. And it's like, no, that's why you should start it now. It's like that quote, the best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago, and the next best time is today. Passive income, like that best time was 10 years ago, next best time is today. But something I talk about with my creative coaching clients, I use nature as metaphor for everything in creative business. So when you think about income, right, I think diverse income streams in your creative business ecosystem is just like having diverse crops on a farm. Like a monocropped farm is not healthy after a certain amount of time. Diversity is really healthy in any environment. And so when you're thinking about revenue streams in your farming business or your creative business, whatever business that might be, thinking about diverse income streams. And the way I kind of categorize them is as like the ocean. So there's the waves and there's the currents. So when we talk about the waves, that's like really immediate income. That would be like selling your veggies at market on Saturday, right? Like direct trade, cash is coming in right there. You see it happening. That's waves. That's like the waves of the ocean crashing in, visible, beautiful. It's what everybody wants to take pictures of. But then there's the currents, and that's deeper in the ocean. That's like way out there. You can't see it, but it's so powerful, right? Currents are incredibly powerful. And with that, that's what I categorize as like passive income, where you can't see it right away. It's not what you're taking photos of. But as you spend time up front, and the sooner the better, building that out, the stronger that current can be over time, where eventually like the currents or the passive income can even be more potentially than like your waves income, if that metaphor lands for everybody.
Yes,
But like,
yes.
I think that can help us to be like, oh yeah, it is a longer game because it's like not the flashy, thing that we see up front. So the sooner we can get started on that, the healthier the whole ecosystem can be.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think there's some bloggers out there that have talked about this. For any of the writers listening, the Copy Blogger podcast, highly recommend. There's these two guys that kind of go back and forth and they talk about their own writing progress and sort of process and what allows them to be successful, or other people, right? They study other systems and kind of look at schematically, they kind of peel back the layers of like, why did that work? And one of the things that I've really taken away from that is just this idea that consistency matters, and that over the course of time, it's not that these people who are, huge and famous did anything differently other than publishing consistently. And they were committed to putting something out there, even if they weren't proud of it, kind of a thing, to your point, right? Of B plus work. Like, I think that that's something that's super important to emphasize. And I think too, so much of what can work against farmers' consistency is seasonality,
Yeah.
right? Of just like the big ebbs and flows of what's required to put on the farm in terms of energy and planning. And it sort of leads to this idea of, okay, let's say you've got a farmer that is interested in sharing their talents or gifts via online sales or whatever that passive income source is to supplement their farm income. What would you recommend in terms of setting up a schedule or a timeline that wouldn't detract from the growing season?
Right. I think some of what you touched on earlier really hit the nail on the head. And this is based on, my experience as a farm hand. Like I know being a farmer is a very different experience, but just what I witnessed, right? It would be, yeah, that high season of spring into harvest season and then winter being much calmer. And so thinking about how you can utilize the winter to like rest and take care of yourself, but also like create the structure for your course, like outline what you would want to teach, and not even like a full blown course. Like what you mentioned, you could create like a PDF, a digital download, like something that's a lower lift, something that you could create literally in like a week of just the information that somebody might need to start up their own farm or to plant their own gardens, anything that you would want to create around that. But really using the winter downtime to, I think about that in our own lives as like the hibernation and kind of like fertilization period of ideas in the creative world. So like how you can use that time to allow those ideas to percolate and put them on paper and outline what you would want to offer, and then even create it in the winter. I really loved your idea of like during high season, if you are going to create something video based, like utilizing friends, utilizing family, utilizing an intern, like paying somebody just to capture footage so that you can have it in the winter so that you can start editing and use that downtime. But then, what's beautiful about that is, again, once you've created it in one of your winter seasons, the ideal would be that in later winter seasons, that product is generating income during that downtime. So
Mm.
then when you are done farming for the season, or you're in that break, you still have that income coming in during the winter season when you are in hibernation. And then you can start dreaming up the next passive income products and just add to it. But yeah, so that's kind of what I've observed is like with that flow, how that could be utilized in that way.
Yeah, I think that's great. And even, I mean, it's interesting. I don't know if this is similar in other states. It could be just because of the seasonality. Maybe it's an upper Midwest thing. But what I have found since moving to the area is just that winter is like high time for all of the farming conferences.
Yeah.
And I know that, given the longer seasons, it might look differently in other states, other parts of the country, but I feel like if any of what you're trying to create relies on connecting with other people in the farming space, so like let's say you want to start a podcast and you want to figure out how to monetize that as a source of revenue for yourself, take advantage of the time that you're already connecting with other people, right? Schedule those interviews after the conference sessions are over, or decide to take a break from the conference for an hour and go have a chat with the person that is going to be there, that's traveling from across the state or whatever, right? Like, take advantage of that time that you are already investing.
Absolutely. And something else I was thinking about on that note is just like with the farmers who would be creating these products, like thinking about who that customer is for those products, right? And my guess is like if you're creating content for products that is about farming, starting a farm, or even gardening or home scale gardening, right? The people who would want to take that course would likely also want to take that in the winter because that's the time to dream out your farm. That's the time to dream out your garden. So there's actually like a win-win benefit if your course or your passive product around that is available in the winter, because that's likely when that type of customer would be like, ooh, yeah, like let's dig into that to prep for next year. So there's that benefit to think about in alignment as well.
Yeah, I think that's great. There's a lot of people out there that have this idea that sort of when you think about your clients and your customers and who's easiest to sell to, I've heard this a lot, just this idea that like you are your customer, you're just like one or two steps ahead of them. And so you don't have to really know everything. You just have to
Yes.
know a little bit more, right? Because
Yes.
that person doesn't know. So
Yes.
all you have to do is share, what you've learned. And it could be, yeah, capturing your own process in your farming journey. And other people want to know about that.
100%. Absolutely. And that ties back to the perfectionism block, right? Where we're like, having to be an expert is another manifestation of trying to be perfect, of like, oh, I need to know every single thing. But you don't. You just need to be a few steps ahead, one step ahead, and you can help somebody else.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, so I want to transition a little bit to get more into what I would say, for me at least, connects to sort of within, the work that I do, this sense of sort of spirituality and connectedness and thinking creatively about your business. And this was one thing that had actually come out of an independent podcast episode as part of your course that I had taken. And I loved this concept, and I'm still thinking about it to this day. And I just feel that so many people will also find it fascinating. So I want you to tell me a little bit more about this philosophy that you have, that businesses have their own personality, and sort of how can this be helpful to allow businesses to grow and evolve over time.
Yeah, I love this topic. And yeah, thinking about business personality, another way I like to say it is like the soul of your business or the spirit of your business. And I do want to share that this was a concept that I ran into earlier this year thanks to a couple of other coaches. One is named Simone Soul, who's like an incredible revolutionary business coach, marketing coach. Just go look her up. And then Megan V. Hill, who's a life coach for creatives. They were both having this conversation about the soul of your business. I was like, what is going on here? And so I started to dig into it and it revolutionized my life. And so essentially, it's thinking about your business as a living, breathing thing. Like it has its own soul, it has its own spirit, it has its own personality, and it wants to live and breathe in this world. I think the more that we can treat most things as living, breathing things, like the healthier we can be as a collective. And so when you think about this with your business, like really, if you're in the beginning stages, if you're already like deep in it, like sitting down and asking, who do you want to become? Like, who do you want to be in this world? This is getting woo. So everybody stick with me, but like directly talking to your business and like journaling with it, like dating it and saying, who are you? Like, who do you want to be in this season of our time together? And you're a collaborator with your business. And so some businesses, yeah, like thinking about personality are going to be really like loud and vibrant and they're going to want to like go fast and move quickly. Other businesses are going to have a soul and spirit that's like, no, we need to move slowly and we want to move really intentionally and we want to be really calculated. And honoring the spirit of your business as a living thing, I think creates such openness to not putting sterile frameworks or rigid how-tos on something that's so beautifully organic and has landed with you. So like thinking about creativity as like a force and business as a force for good in the world. And like you get to be the vehicle to share that, like honoring who it wants to be and what it wants to become. And so then in that sense, you're like in relationship with your business. So rather than like acting on your business, which I used to do, right? I think that's what we're taught to do. It's like very rigid, very linear, like you act on it, quarterly metrics, all this stuff where it's like, you're not treating it as an equal partner and instead seeing that your business has a personality and a soul and you're in collaboration to make the world better. Then it's like, oh, how can we work together here to serve our people? And that just lightens everything up. And then new creative ideas can come in. And it just allows, I think, the creativity of business to flourish in a way that rigid structures don't always foster.
Hmm. Do you have off of the top of your mind any examples of when you used that process and then what it actually did for you? Like if it changed your decision on something or inspired a new idea? I don't know. I just feel like people would be curious to hear what that actually looks like in practice.
Yeah, I mean, I do frequent like check-ins with my business, especially since thinking about it in this way. I think from the beginning, I've had a sense of it without fully diving into this area. So I think like from the beginning, if you haven't been in this mindset, it can also just be your intuition, right? So from the beginning of starting my creative business, it was like sharing essentially with me, like I knew for me and the business that I wanted to be fully mobile. I wanted to work from wherever. I wanted the freedom of time. And so that led to these passive income pursuits and income streams. So recently this year, like I do frequent check-ins just to see if we're still developing in the way that feels healthy and good. And so specifically, I have my creative coaching program for women who are starting their creative business. And it was in a different format last year where it was like live coaching, live teaching every session, like very, very live showing up all the time. And something was feeling heavy. And I was like, I need to talk to my business. Like something is off here. We're not offering as much value as we could. Like there's something here. So I just sat down, multiple conversations, and like sometimes it's not obvious at first glance, but like kept being like, what do we want to shift here? Like directly talking in the business, like what's feeling good, what's not. And then just free writing responses. And what came through was like, there's so much more we can offer. So I've turned it into a hybrid model after like talking to my soul of my business, where now the program has pre-recorded modules that my clients take on their own time for the foundational building blocks of business. And then we have live coaching sessions in between. And that has just like revolutionized my experience, but also my clients' experience. And that was through pausing, taking intention, taking time to ask like how this season my business wanted to like manifest and how it wanted to like live in the world in a new way. So not getting stuck in old ways of doing things just because that's how we've been doing them, but being like, how can we change this and like make things better all around?
Most definitely. Man, I can just think of so many applications of that to people who are just starting to build their farming business and sort of
Mhm.
seeing all of the different market channel opportunities that
Yes.
are out there and trying to decide which direction do I go? How many people do I try to sell to? How many, what are my financial goals that I want to be earning from these types of things? And then, yeah, just checking in. I think there's so much opportunity to even marry thinking about your own personality types and what brings you the most energy. I mean, one of the things that I hope to work a lot with farmers on is sort of marrying business strategy with human design and looking at your
Yes.
body graph and the different channels. And there's going to be some people who listen to this and they're like, I don't know what the hell she's talking about right now, but
Yeah,
you know.
I know.
And it's just like, it's so fascinating to me to think about how you can leverage your natural talents and abilities and the things that bring you the most joy in the farming space, right? Because it's like when you create this really high vibration within yourself of joy and love, ultimately, like there's so much that's out there in sort of the world of spirituality and mindfulness about this idea of like the vibration of love. It's pervades everything, right? And the vibrations of like love and fear cannot coexist. There's also that saying. And this idea that when you are able to bring that to the work that you do, it's so evident from everyone around you that that's what you are experiencing.
Mhm.
And just good things always follow. It's
Mhm.
so cool.
Mhm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I think there's so much power to like trusting your joy and also trusting your desire, especially when it comes to what you want to do in your business, like your farm. What do you want to do with your farm? That's where like, sorry, this gets me so excited because like not sorry that I'm excited, but when I started farming in New Mexico, one of the most beautiful gifts was that I got to go to all of these different farms, all of these friends' farms. And it was literally like going to different artist studios. Everybody had a different approach. Everybody had a different way of organizing their seeds. Everybody had a different way of how they wanted to treat the land. And I think there's so much power in trusting that vision for yourself. So, what you're saying with like the beginning stages of building your farm, where there's so much noise, right? There's so many options, there's so many opinions, there's so many books, getting quiet and talking directly to your plot, like to you, whether you're renting or leasing or owning, and like your farm vision, your farm business, and asking, what do we want to become? You know, is it something huge? Because there's a lot of pressure to do that. Or is it like small and contained, you know, and just trusting that what comes through for that is valuable.
Yes. Yes. It's almost like farming as a form of self-expression. Oh,
Yes.
I just love that idea. Oh, this is so good. Okay, so for people that are interested in learning more about what you're doing, tell them more about what you're working on right now in your business that has you the most excited.
Yeah, I've just been doing amazing work with wonderful clients who are starting their businesses, and just seeing that ripple effect is truly one of the most life-giving experiences because there's that quote about teaching, like you never know where your impact stops. And the more that I can help people start businesses that are going to help other people, like that work has been so fulfilling. I'm also really excited because in the new year, I'm going to dive back into the illustration side of my business and focus more on partnering with environmental and nature brands. I want to do more educational illustration projects. And then I'm actually prepping to relaunch my press publish course, which is all about how to launch your own online course for passive income in your business. So I launched that for the first time earlier this year, and I've been doing some behind the scenes updates from the first round, and it's about to relaunch, which I'm really stoked about.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And like I mentioned before, I've signed up for this course in its first iteration, and it was fantastic. I felt like it was a really good primer on understanding just different resources that are out there and just stuff to have in mind. I think that was more helpful than anything. I mean, down to the ideas of like, what kind of lighting options do you have if you're recording yourself, right? Like, these are things that I could have researched myself and gone down many rabbit holes, but I think the way that you laid it out in your course, and I will say I really loved the audio. I mean, that's how I made my way through pretty much the entire thing, was listening while I was driving, cleaning, cooking, whatever it was. And then I would take notes on my phone about, "Ooh, I really want to come back to this thing," so that I can mark that down. I mean, that was super helpful and accessible
Yes,
too. I just feel like audio is such a great way for learning. At least that's how I learn the best is hearing
absolutely.
stuff.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I just think it's great. Highly, highly recommend for anyone listening if you're interested in that kind of thing. And then where can people go if they want to find out more about your work and your services?
Yeah, the best place is Instagram. I'm on there. I'm always open to DMs and chatting there. So my Instagram accounts are at Prince and Plants, Prince as in printmaking, PRINTS. and then at Liz Brindley Artwork. You can also find out more about all of my work at princeandplants.com. And if you're interested in joining the waitlist for Press Publish to be notified when it relaunches, there is a sign up link in the show notes of this episode. So you can get on that.
Awesome. Then we'll make sure that we throw all of those things and more. Maybe we'll throw some book link recommendations as
Oh, yeah.
well in
Yeah.
there. Yes, make it very helpful for people. And I'm just so grateful, Liz, for the work that you're doing in the world and the gifts that you're sharing with other people. It's just so great to see this example and sort of pull back and think about, how does it apply to the world of farming? So I just am wishing you the best in your journey ahead. And yeah, just thank you again.
Thank you so much. This has been wonderful.
If you love this conversation as much as we did, feel free to share the love by passing it along to a friend or fellow farmer, and be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss another episode. Until next time, friends.